Recently, I was able to finally rewatch The Devil is a Part-Timer, something that I haven't seen since the end of 2014, and something I've been wanting to rewatch for a while. I had really thought about doing it last year, but Netflix took it down kind of out of the blue, so I had to wait till I could get the Blu-ray and watch it that way. Part of this is because of the second season coming out in July, which is something I don't think anyone really thought was still possible, but lo and behold, there it is, and I'm very excited for it and looking forward to it immensely, even more so after this rewatch. I just really came to appreciate so much more about the series from giving it a second look. Not that I didn't already love it originally, but this is what you want when you rewatch a show. You want to still love the things you loved originally, but find even more things that you didn't pick up on that you love now. The thing that resonated with me the most and that I liked the most on this rewatch was just realizing how genuine and believable the character growth is. Especially in the case of people like Emmy and Susanoo. Characters who have had these histories dealing with Ente Isla and the church and fighting Satan in the case of Emmy. And it makes sense why they would struggle to trust the devil. I mean, it's the devil. But they see and witness the devil becoming more and more human and caring about the world and not even wanting to go back to Ente Isla and conquer it. And at first, he wants to take over Earth, but then he kind of moves away from that as well. And it's like, you get why they wouldn't just immediately flip a switch and be okay with it, because this is someone they've been fighting for years and years and who's the embodiment of evil and the demon king. And of course they wouldn't trust the devil immediately, but they see the evidence that, hey, maybe he's reforming. But even so, every now and then they have to be wary, they have to be careful, they maybe mishear something or think, oh, well, what if it's all a ruse? Or what if he's going back to his ways? What if he's getting too much magic and might become more evil as a result? Like, the growth feels believable because it's not sudden, but it's also not drawn out and hard to kind of understand where the characters are coming from. And it's a difficult balance to achieve, because it's very easy to either have character growth that happens too quickly and doesn't feel believable, happens way too slowly and you just kind of want the writers to get on with it, or goes back and forth in a way that doesn't feel right and feels like the writers can't make up their minds. I could see people seeing the character development here as that third category, but I strongly disagree with that. The writers clearly want these characters to feel real, to feel human, because a human experiencing something like this, someone who you've hated your whole life, you've been fighting, who you genuinely don't think you can trust, but constantly you're shown evidence that maybe they are changing and getting better. You want to believe it because you're seeing it and it's a good thing, but it's hard to break those old beliefs and habits and concerns. And I think the way this show does it through some of these characters feels so believable and so genuine, and I love it. I really appreciate it, and it's something I did not notice the first time I watched it. And just in general, a character like Susanoo, who I largely didn't even remember all that much about from the first time watching it, I've really come to appreciate a lot more through her backstory and everything she went through, and seeing the struggles she goes through, much like Emmy, to actually trust Satan and ultimately go against the church. It's just something I've really come to appreciate, both in her character and just the way her and Emmy are written. Other characters like Ashia, I really have come to find more entertaining than I did. Not that he wasn't entertaining the first time, but it's the small things, like the fact that despite him being so loyal and responsible, and like they could easily have just had him be that and just made jokes based on that, like him being effectively the group's mom. But then they add in things, I think like once or twice, where he's like, oh, I've got to go help Satan, something bad's happening, but the first thing he wants to do is go back to the apartment and get his cape. And I love little things like that kind of give, some insights into the character, that despite him being so devout and so loyal and so, level-headed, he still feels like this is important, but what's even more important is getting my cape. I love things like that. And Satan himself is just a very likable character, as weird as that is to say for someone who doesn't know the series. His growth also feels very believable. You see him start off as what you would expect, wanting to take over the world through what he sees as the most effective and realistic means for someone in his position. But you see him come to actually appreciate the world and appreciate the people around him and become more and more human, and it doesn't feel abrupt or unrealistic, and it's just fun and likable, and generally that's how the show is. It's fun, not just because it's a comedy, and it is very funny, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot more to it than that. Through the characters, through how they grow, through their dynamics and interactions. I mean, it's hard not to enjoy all of them interacting with each other and playing off of each other, and the comedy that ensues. And it's just fun all around, and I love it. And I really, really hope we get more of this in season 2. I hope it's more of the same, basically. And I've heard some wariness over the source material beyond this point. I don't know what happens in it, but I hope that those concerns don't translate over into the second season. I really want it to be a genuine and fulfilling continuation. And I hope that people who haven't watched this show don't just see it as a comedy. And again, it is a comedy. It is very funny, but there is more to it than that. These are interesting characters, a pretty interesting world as well. It's kind of a mix, you could say, of like trying to follow like the actual biblical stuff and, tangentially related biblical stuff for the devil, but also like it starts off making you think that they're just kind of using random demon and devil names, for like his generals and for Satan himself, but he's effectively just like a demon king in this fantasy world. But then they bring in like the more religious stuff, like, the church and heaven, and like Lucifer's whole thing when he's introduced is that the church will actually get him back into heaven, and then you get archangels and all this stuff that it does sort of make you wonder, well, which is it? Is this just some demon king, or is this the actual devil, or is it both? Like, well, how does hell factor into that? Like, is Ente Isla just some place he decided to conquer in addition to controlling hell? Like, did he try to go back to hell after he lost control of Ente Isla and then just accidentally came to Earth? Like, there's a lot of stuff that could be ironed out there, and I don't know if they would intend to, but I do find the lore, the more that the show goes on and the more they expand on it, very interesting. I like that they introduce more and more elements and don't just have him be like a generic demon king with the devil's name. Like, he seems to be like the actual devil, but there's other elements attached to it to kind of flesh it out, and I appreciate that a lot. And I'm curious how the second season will approach that, if more details on that will be shown, if maybe we'll see the other two generals, because we've only seen 2 of the 4. I'm curious if they'll come into play or if they won't. Hopefully they will, because I don't know why you would even bring them up if they're not going to show up at some point. But long and short of it is, I'm really, really happy I got to rewatch it. There are a lot of things like Susanoo, like Ashia, like the character growth that I didn't really appreciate as much the first time that I do now. And I really hope the second season can keep the ball rolling and keep everything as strong as it was in the first season. I mean, if you haven't seen this, I really, really implore you to. I mean, it's a show about the devil making burgers at a McDonald's ripoff. Like, that's just it's a bizarre and silly premise, but it works so well, and I love it. and hopefully you'll love it too. So I strongly recommend you sit back, you relax, grab yourself some McDonald's, and give this show a watch. I'll be looking forward to the second season, and I hope you will too.